All right, while we're waiting on this, let's go take a look at our new fleet commander because we have just unlocked Fleet Commander Khan here. I have not looked at any of his abilities and skills. So he's got a couple of skill trees. We can obviously, I have some time I could promote him and do some things. But let's look at his abilities. So we'll start with the visionary tree here. Apex Shred. Well, that's helpful. These are on duty abilities. This is boosting damage against players while cloaked. This is non-armada hostiles getting more Apex Shred, so that's pretty helpful, which will lead into higher crit chance against hostiles, scaling up to 15%. So if you're just starting out with a base crit rate 15% higher, then officers like Hugh and Vielle become less important to have below deck. Increases your apex barrier against players for 6 rounds. Starts each round. Wow. Okay. So in the start of round 1, you just add 500 to your apex barrier, and then you're just building it up until you get to eventually 3,000 if the fight goes 6 rounds. That's pretty interesting. Right, crit chances, we just looked at that. Decrease the attack stats of all bridge crew. So, okay. Making the other player's attack value go down by a significant percentage. That'll have an impact on their ship stats and abilities. This will simultaneously boost all of your officer stats, starting at 250% and going up, which is up to a 1200% increase, which is a much higher increase than a number of those Pioneer Crests researches that they kind of wanted you to do to help out with those away teams. This is certainly a larger number that we're seeing right off the bat and probably easier to scale up. On round start, chance to apply morale to your ship for 2 rounds if the opponent ship is burning against other players. Okay. So if you make them burn, you will get morale as a bonus. You've got a chance, starts at 10%, scales up to 40%. Hey, guess what? There's 2 other ones. If you give them a hull breach, maybe you throw burning on them. And I'll bet if you give them hull breach, you have a chance to give them morale. Look at that. To give yourself morale. Okay. And then the bottom one here, this is an activated ability, much like Lorca has, the Wrath of Khan. Increases critical damage against other players. So this is a PvP based ability, unlike Lorca. So you're boosting critical hit damage by up to 400%. Okay, so a little more PvP based stuff in this visionary tree, but not exclusively PvP based. What's up, Alestes? Welcome on in. Your always on abilities would be your Apex Barrier, and then eventually, that's an active ability, that's a specialty one. So he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. In the Extremist catalog, we've got boosting isolated damage when you're defending your station, giving you more apex barrier against hostiles. That's just on combat start when he's on duty, right? You could get up to 2,000 apex barrier. Again, freeing up some other below deck slots. Maybe now you don't need to use people like Rachel Garrett or Zeph below deck to get a little bit extra barrier if you have Khan doing the work for you. Lowers their critical hit damage when you are mining with a surveyor. So if you're mining and they attack you, they crit for a lot less damage. Interesting. That's going to run into a cap anyway, so that's less impressive. You land a critical hit on a non-armada hostile and could boost your crit damage for 3 rounds, which can stack. And this can also scale up only to 25%. That's pretty weak. It can stack, obviously, and Every time you land a critical, you're getting a little more damage, but not as impressive. Here you go. An always active ability. Combat start, boost isolytic damage against other players for 5 rounds. And that scales all the way up to 100%. So an extra 100% isolytic damage, always on and active against other players. That's a good ability. That's an arena boost. Arenas are... That's another arena boost. Arenas aren't really doing so hot, and I certainly haven't participated in them in a while now. Just feel like the rewards that are still left available are really worth the effort. This is also against other players. This boosts your isolytic defense. This one makes your ship repair a little more cost effective. Okay. And then down here, also against players, increases your apex shred. So again, getting through all the apex barrier that they've gotten from the previous abilities. Down here at the bottom gives you apex shred to kind of negate it. That's typical. The further you get in the tree, the more they reward people for getting there. So usually you have some better skills. It just seems a little weird that some of them are sort of direct counters to ones in the same tree. And then lastly, we have his Overseer. More hull health for your ships. There's another, 1,500%? Yeah, 1,500% at max. Always fun to have. On round start against players, you have a chance to repair 5% of your hull damage from the previous round as long as you've been max fortified. And it starts at a 40% chance to do that. Goes all the way up to 100%. So eventually, as long as you are max fortified and fighting other players doing PvP, you will repair 5% of your hull damage taken in the previous round. It's a nice little extra benefit. Maybe it makes a difference in a few fights. It just seems like it's a very narrow little Venn diagram there. But the Always On ability increases crit chance against players for 4 rounds. So against other players, you're also boosting your crit chance by up to 50% on combat start for the first 4 rounds. Again, kind of taking away the need for someone like Honor Guard Worf, right? If you've got other things, you've got, primes and research and things boosting your base crit level. And now you've got this ability against other players. Maybe now you don't need like a crew that would rely on Honor Guard Worf. Or maybe now with players getting this, Phlox becomes more valuable because players are going to have a much higher crit chance. And if you can negate some of that, maybe you live a little longer. So that was row 2, right? Increasing your apex shred. This boosts... Okay, so if you're on an explorer, this will boost damage against other players for 10 rounds. Scaling all the way up to 2,500%. Yikes. An extra 2,500% damage. However, there are a lot of other things already adding to weapon damage, so that number may seem quite large. But depending on your research and things like that, you could already be adding, 5, 10, 15,000 as it is. Still will make a noticeable difference, but again, it's only going to work. Well, I'm guessing there's one for each ship type. There is one for each ship type. So depending on whatever type of ship you're using, getting a big bonus like that, it could help. It could help. And yes, there are other researchers that we saw in here that do lower your opponent's crit damage and weapon damage and all kinds of things like that too. So, you're boosting a stat while simultaneously putting in the counter to bring it right back down, which means what? If you effectively have to invest in both because you have to assume your opponent has also invested in both. So they've got the boost and they're going to reduce yours. And if you don't have both of those, then they're going to have a huge advantage over you. If you have both of those too, then you effectively negate all of the benefits and you're just shooting at each other like normal, in which case you basically both invested in these abilities just to, you know, have a level playing field against people who also invested in them. Not exactly the balance that I'm sure some players are looking for. All right, here's our next always on ability. Increases your critical damage for 4 rounds against players. So we've got one boosting isolytic, now we've got one boosting crit damage, and again these are the always on abilities. We did see some of the other on duty abilities that are the counters to those that lower that type of damage. And then when you're attacking bases, that'll give you some more isolytic damage to kind of cut through. So that is con. We do have some skill points here, so this is an always on ability, so let's just at least unlock that. So now I just have my crit chance getting boosted against other players. We'll just take this up a couple notches to like 20%. I don't PvP a whole lot, so I don't want to go crazy with this one, but it's nice to have at least a little bit of a benefit and a bonus going. What else is isolytic damage against players? Yeah, we got to get that one going too. This one requires, I have to promote him. Okay. He does have a first seat required ability. It's in the first tree. It's this one down here. Increases your base critical damage against players when activated. This is an on-duty ability. He does have to be in the first slot to trigger this one. And this is boosting your critical hit damage. So his on-duty abilities, or his always-on abilities, you've got crit damage against players, apex barrier against players, isolytic damage against players, critical damage against players, and apex shred against players. So all of his always-on abilities are very PvP heavy. Actually having him, in the spot, those abilities are a little more selective. And I don't know who I would honestly slot him in and replace him with. He's not, I probably should wait for like an actual fleet commander event to level him up. But I'm just going to do a couple here real quick. As someone who doesn't PvP a whole lot, none of his abilities sort of like jump out at me and be like, oh yeah, I should definitely want to have that. It does seem like there's a couple down here. Like this one just boosting all stats. Like that seems like a good one to have. He has to be on duty for it to work. But obviously, if I can get another 500, 600% to officer stats, that's going to have an impact in my away teams, my priority away teams, and even just the regular construction of my ship and the values that are getting added, especially to something like my board cube. What else we got down here? These are arenas. Those aren't very exciting. That's a PvP one. That's a PvP one, and then these are also PvP ones. Yeah, so I'm not seeing a whole lot that I'd want that's right here. He's got some Armada-based ones, getting Apex Shred and whatnot. Getting some Apex Shred done is always good. But he does have to be on duty for that one to be working. Same thing with this one over here. That's a player-based one. This one here giving you Apex Barrier, which is also very helpful, especially for things like solo waves. Like that can be very helpful. The question would just be who to bump to put him in. an active slot. Or if you had a 5th or a 6th slot, because, you know, those are also available now. I only have 4, but there are 6 available. So there's Khan in a nutshell. And we did all that in just a few minutes while we were waiting on this armada, which was worth 310 points. So I'll have to do 7, because 6 will get me too short. I'll be just shy. 6.5 is what I need to do, but unless I want to promote one of those other officers, which I don't think I can do. And this system looks unnecessarily full. So what do you guys think of Khan? Is he good? Is he bad? Does he not fit your playstyle? What are your thoughts? What do you got? Tell me what you're thinking.